Surprise, surprise, anti-rights groups in the UK are on the rise. What do I mean by this? Well, Amnesty International has today published a landmark study into the growing network of right-wing advocacy groups operating in the UK, showing, among other things, an enormous growth in their funding. The report looks at 65 organisations across the country, all beavering away to turn back the clock. Of the groups, 25 are anti-abortion organisations, 12 exist to promote conversion therapy, so-called, which of course seeks to suppress the sexual orientation and or gender identity of LGBTQI plus people. 7 are ultra-conservative Christian policy groups, 4 are ultra-conservative Christian media, and another 4 are categorised by Amnesty as ultra-conservative Christian professionals. Interestingly and alarmingly, 6 of the groups are UK branches of anti-human rights groups based in the United States. Almost half of the groups, the Amnesty study finds, have emerged in just the last 10 years. And a staggering 3/4 of them are registered as either charities or companies. Perhaps most alarmingly of all, though, is the kind of money that these groups are spending. Amnesty estimates that between 2019 and 2023, they collectively spent £106 million on their campaigns, which marks an increase in spending of 33.6% over the same period. The largest spenders are UK branches of the US mothership organisations, who spent £34 million in the UK on their causes. Amnesty have released a video of their findings. In this part, they deal with those US-based groups.
But it's American organisations that are spending the most to influence policy and the public here in the UK. Let's look at the Alliance for Defending Freedom that now have a branch in the UK. They spent 50 years working to undermine women's right to abortion in the United States of America, resulting in Roe versus Wade being overturned. And so right now, women and pregnant people are dying in the US because they can't access safe abortions. The Alliance for Defending Freedom's expenditure in the UK has grown by 187% since 2019. They have a clear plan. They're very well funded. They're patient. They want to take away our hard-won rights.
So incredibly depressing, isn't it, that these battles have to be fought generation after generation, and that the liberal view of history that things just get better, they lock in, and then they get better again, isn't very accurate. So after those US-based groups, the largest spenders are ultra-conservative Christian policy and advocacy groups, who spent $31.5 million between 2019 and 2023, enormous sums of money. And anti-abortion groups after them, who spent $28.5 million in the same period. The report also finds that conversion therapy groups have increased their spending by 165%. Meanwhile, crisis pregnancy centres increased theirs by 46%. Crisis pregnancy centres, I should say, are designed to look like impartial advice centres, and they're unregulated. In practice, they operate to dissuade people from seeking an abortion, even going so far as to tell desperate women that abortions cause breast cancer. Amnesty International's Gender Justice Programme Director, Chiara Caparo, said this about the report. Our mapping reveals a powerful and coordinated movement of organisations across the UK that are hell-bent on reversing our human rights protections and preventing progress on women's and LGBTI rights. It's clear that these anti-rights organisations are mobilising, growing and influencing at an alarming rate, spending millions of pounds to further their harmful causes. These groups are chipping away at abortion rights, LGBTI rights, and are promoting dangerous human rights abuses such as so-called conversion therapy. They form a powerful network, have huge bankrolls, and are growing their political influence to grab our rights one by one. This is a full frontal attack on all of our freedoms right here in the UK. We must not be complacent in defending and demanding our rights. Now, it's hardly surprising that regressive organisations still exist in the UK. tussling with marginalized groups to reclaim hard-won rights. The increase in the number of such organizations and, of course, in their spending power is very alarming indeed. Helena, perhaps lazily, we sort of associate these kinds of organized right-wing religious groups with the United States, right? Particularly the kind of US heartlands. But what's going on here? Why are they growing at such an alarming rate in the UK? Or is that question naive?
I mean, I think that there's a couple of things into why that these particular groups are looking at the UK specifically. So in terms of their political connections, there are a lot of people who are connected in the Conservative Party very specifically to these kind of organisations. And the reason why they are so in the position to be kind of won over by these groups is because the Conservative Party as a political entity has lost the argument on the economy. And what happens when the Tories do this? They move towards social conservatism. That's what they've always tended to do. Remember in the 90s, there was the Back to Basics campaign, because after Black Wednesday, the Tories can run on the economy. So they run on social conservatism. So you see people within the Tory party moving towards these kind of socially conservative positions. And so once you have politicians who are interested in it, suddenly those advocacy groups know that there's a good place where they can spend their money to gain political power. Because when it comes to social policy, you need institutional access. So you require having politicians who are kind of amicable to your political positions, and suddenly you need to spend the money. And so there's already this kind of base that's sitting there just waiting to be captured by public advocacy groups who have the money to spend buying politicians. I think that's one thing. The second, of course, is that they always want to expand into new markets, just like any kind of organization. And that's because I think a lot of the ability for these people to influence discourse in the United States has kind of reached its limit, right? Most people have made their positions clear on these kind of issues in a very, very heavily polarized and politicized American environment. And that trying to continue to do so, you get very little actual return on investments, very much diminishing returns on investments in the United States. So you're going to want to look elsewhere and see where you can move the dial, especially in more progressive countries, at least legislatively, such as the United Kingdom and countries in Europe. But of course, they're coming to the UK specifically for one huge big reason, right? And that is because there is a very large base of gender critical feminists that they can try and convert into being right-wing conservatives. So whereas if you look at the United States, for example, a lot of the gender critical people, a lot of the transphobic people, they're just right wingers, right? It's just conservative right wingers. And there's the big kind of political divide, Republican versus Democrat. But there was a really large base in the UK of gender critical feminists who perceive themselves to be left wing that do not have in the United States, that they don't have in the United States at all, really, or not to the same extent. So there is a real kind of untapped market of people that they could win over. This has been a strategy by the right wing for a very, very long time. But in more recent terms, this has been the kind of brainchild of people like Christopher Rufo. So what they have used is certain wedge issues, and then they use a kind of form of newspeak. Like woke versus anti-woke is the new kind of version of this. They use critical race theory as kind of all-encompassing idea of, any kind of racialized politics in the United States when it came to that kind of issue. When it comes to issues around trans people and abortion and social conservatism, especially in the UK, woke versus anti-woke is the kind of newspeak that they use. Now, when people hear newspeak, they think, well, new terms. That's not what it means. What it is, it's a way of trying to dumb down discourse into very simplified, very kind of easy to digestible kind of groups so that you can restrict the level to which we discuss these issues. So if you can take any huge kind of tapestry of issues that are from different parts of the political spectrum, but social conservatives all agree on, and of course fiscal conservatives as well, and paint them all as woke, and then paint woke as the enemy, then you can get them to be moved over on other issues too. And you've seen this, for example, with certain particular figures who I won't name here, who started off being progressive on most issues, but then had an issue when it came to trans people. And now they're saying things like, well, I'm questioning vaccines, I'm questioning climate change, I'm questioning taxing the rich. But not because these are issues that they ever had any positions that were conservative on before, but they're in the woke box. Woke is the enemy. So now that they have not trusted these things anymore because they've been won over by conservative arguments through trans people as a wedge issue, when you have this kind of untapped group of people, right? You even at the last election, gender critical feminist types were saying, I would usually never consider voting Conservative, but I will potentially do so now just because I can't trust Labour the Party because of trans people. I can't trust the Green Party because of trans people. That shows you where those wedge issues are able to move people towards a broadly more conservative outlook. Once you win them over on this issue, what other issues could you win them over on? Which is why they're so intent in this LGB drop the T policy that a lot of these conservative think tanks and pressure groups have adopted, because they know that gay rights, especially in European countries, is a settled thing. It's really difficult to win people over on this. So you have to divide away the trans part of the community to win people over on this issue. Well, trans people are the weird ones. Gay people are normal. We've accepted this. But trans people are the new bad thing. We can't win you over otherwise unless we kind of break these people off and then create an enemy there. And then once you've sold them on this, slowly you can move them over on the other things as well. It's really insidious, but there's a very specific part of the UK market of TERFs, I guess, or gender critical people that you don't really get in the United States, and that's why they're moving over here.